Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
How you doing today?
Groovy, particularly under the circumstances of this, our second episode of the week.
Yeah, happy Friday also.
Woohoo!
It's not Friday for us.
G-I-F.
It's Friday for all the people listening. So, I was just wondering if you had any new perspectives in how you were thinking about upcoming standard or other formats.
Yeah. I mean, to begin with, one of my perspectives is that we could potentially use our preview card from this week. New perspectives.
So, new perspectives. This is a very different card than I think we've seen in standard in quite some time. It's a 6 casting cost enchantment. It costs
at the same cost as Hive Mind?
Blue and 5.
Okay, 5 and a blue.
5 and a blue. Enchantment. It's got 2 big lines of text. Here's the first one. When New Perspectives enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards.
That's a start.
I like that.
Yes, I'm interested. Tell me more.
Now, if it only said that, 6 is quite a bit to ask for this. But wait, there's more. As long as you have 7 or more cards in hand, you may pay 0 rather than pay cycling costs.
Yes. So, man, there are a couple different directions you can go with this one. Where to start? What about the cycling? The Fluctuator part just sounds like such a... that's got to be so loud of a brain space thing that draws the focus, right?
I mean, it's the kind of thing where if you have it online, it's so powerful.
Well, and it has haste functionally. If you had 7 cards in your hand, right, and you on your opponent's turn, Glimmer of Genius or something, right? Or you activate your Blue God, whatever, so that you get up to 8 cards, and then you draw a card for the turn and have 9, you can play your 6th land, have 8 cards in your hand, play New Perspectives, have 7 cards in your hand, and then you go. You just start cycling, right? You could cycle as many cycling lands as you wanted for your reclamation, You could cycle all the miscellaneous... Remember, it says you may pay 0, not even just 2 less. So even the ones like Cast Out that have a white in their activation typically, cycle them all. So you can cycle all your cycling creatures that you have in your hand and that you draw from all the cycling, and have tons of creatures in your graveyard for anything that counts them. You could have all the different types. You could have Delirium immediately. You can trigger Drakes. Now you have to pay a mana each time, but you can trigger Drakes as much as you want. If you have the Archfiend in play, you can just kill all your opponent's creatures.
Oh, I think that's the
from
one.
Here on out.
It's just so powerful. You're 5 casting costs, you play the Archfiend, right? The Archfiend of Ifnir, which is a 5/4 demon for black 3 flying, and it has the ability whenever you cycle or discard another card, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponents control. So that's your 5, and your 6 you draw up past 7. You might not even have had a single cycling card in your hand when you did it, but New Perspectives, gives you a new perspective on that. I can just imagine the drama, right? You have no cycling cards. You just draw 1, 2, and the third one is a cycling card, and then you cycle it into a cycling card, and then you go, right?
That's actually that's once you factor in that top line, you don't even need the Glimmer of Genius anymore because New Perspectives is already all of that. You could have just played some cards. If you play New Perspectives and have at least 5, I guess it could be your 5th card. You could have 4 other cards. You draw 3 from New Perspectives, and now you're at 7, and you can just go. You can find the perfect answer for the job. You can trigger your stuff as much as you want. If you untap, Now you can make drakes for per every mana.
Oh my
right?
god. Infinity drakes.
So, like, this is a big game for the Fluctuator aspect. But there's more. There's more, right?
The permanent aspect's really interesting, right? So, like, if you just compare it to, like, a Tidings or something, right? It's a little bit more expensive and you get fewer cards. But I think that there are some interesting potential advantages to it being a permanent, right? Like, if you could bounce it to your hand or blink it, like if there's some ability to blink it.
Well, and while it's in play, it's a Fluctuator, so it's actually a draw 4, and one of your cards is a 0-cost Fluctuator. But it's a better Fluctuator.
Oh, yeah,
right?
It's a way better Fluctuator.
Right, and once you have it in play, as you were alluding to, your Felidar Guardian can give you an Ancestral Recall. Right? Like, you blink the new perspectives, and now you just draw 3 more cards.
Yes, you do that.
That's crazy. That's crazy. What are they doing?
It's real interesting. Like, it just does all these things that nothing else does in a way. Like, to me, like the maybe this will sound weird to you. The closest analog of a card that I can think of around this is actually Decree of Silence from way back in Scourge, which is like an enormously expensive enchantment at 6 UU that had an interesting and powerful cycling ability, right? Like, do you think that there's like a? I guess would you ever epic for this? Probably not.
What would I epic for it?
Yeah. What's the enduring ideal? We probably would never enduring ideal for this, right?
Well, I don't know. It is kind of cute that once you enduring ideal for new perspectives, you don't have to worry about drawing cards you can't cast anymore because your other cards just cycle. Yeah. So you can just cycle all the way through your deck and trigger the Drakehaven or Lightning Rift or whatever you're into. You can trigger it over and over and over and over and over again. I don't know that you'd want to do, because I think that you're not going to have none of the like accelerators are going to have cycling, but it's interesting. You might go that route. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could go.
Do you think it's most likely to be a standard card?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's got some chances in other spots, but I think it's most likely to be a standard card. But yeah, I mean, what if you just bounce it, right? Like, are there any good bounce? Is there any good, there's often, the various, 2-mana bounce spells, right?
Yeah, I mean, in some formats you could, Echoing Truth or Chain of Vapor it. You could make it, maybe if you could make it a creature, there's a lot of things that you can easily bounce once it's a creature. But yeah, I think that's part of it, right? Like, just the ability to use the same new perspectives multiple times is just one of the inherently interesting and powerful things about it that come from it being a permanent, not like a sorcery or an instant.
So anything that just keys off of counting all of the different creatures in your graveyard, it's like this takes on a whole new meaning there, right? Or, what about the Jitrog monster in Modern? If you have this with the Jitrog monster, now when you cycle your cycling land for 0, you draw a card for cycling, you draw a card for the Jitrog monster. So now you just can, cycle your lands for 2 cards. And heaven forbid you should draw more. I could easily imagine this as a potential. I mean, now granted, it might just be the Seismic Assault way works better, right? But I don't know. Because, with the Seismic Assault way, you still need to get, a Dakmor Salvage to be, sure that you're going to keep going unless your deck just has so many land in it.
I mean, not for nothing. Isn't the Jitrog monster still legal in Standard right now?
Now we're talking.
You can 5/6, pretty big guy into. No, maybe you can't 5/6 it, right? Because he has to sacrifice on upkeep. But I think it's not too difficult to get. Actually, you could, right? You just play 2 lands.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could 5/6 it, no problem. So you 5/6 this, you draw up into the correct position with new perspectives, and they're like, cycling lands is just the beginning of the havoc that you could wreak with this. I don't know. It seems powerful. He's a huge creature. This is a huge, powerful effect.
See, now that's a way to get a ton of land in your graveyard for the reclamation. Right? Like, that's a lot.
Better figure out a payoff.
What we got to do is figure out how we're going to, have the Jitrog monster that lives for a turn.
I don't know. I think he could. He's big.
He is big.
Nobody
he is
big. 6/6s.
Plus, sometimes you'll put this thing in play first, and then cycle to go find the Jitrog monster.
You can. So, do you think New Perspectives is going to be best friends with Drakehaven?
I don't know about best friends. I think it'll be best friends with the cycling lands. I think it can work really well with Drakehaven. Drakehaven costing mana is a very real cost. But if you ever untap, which you're probably going to actually want to do. But when you untap, then it works real well.
So I was thinking maybe this is a weird synergy. Maybe it doesn't even make sense. But both cards are in the same color, and both cards have the same kind of limiting clause. So so my mind just went there, and I don't know if it actually does anything, but New Perspectives and Kefnir the Mindful, right? Both of them have a clause around having 7 or more cards.
Yep. And Kefnir can help fuel. Yeah, I mean, both of them have ways to help fuel the other. And in particular, once you have Kefnir in play, it's kind of nice to cycle all the extra stuff. Cycle your lands. You can pick up your land and cycle it for free if you want.
Yeah, that's actually a huge point, right?
There's lots of little tactical things you can do.
Like when you have, in a long game, when you have, quote, too much land in play, Kefnir can pick up, one of your many cycling lands that are now available, and then you can get rid of it for 0 mana. Go get some business.
It's worth noting that even when you cycle Renewed Faith, if you cycle Renewed Faith when you have New Perspectives in play, you'll still gain the 2 life. Because Renewed Faith just says whenever you cycle Renewed Faith, you may gain 2 life. You don't have to actually spend the mana to do it.
Sure.
That's cool. A little extra value. What do you think of the possibility of this in some sort of a delirium sort of approach? Is there any chance that you're going to want to drop this and cycle through your deck more rapidly? Once you have this, is it actually helping enable your delirium, or is that just not?
I don't think I'm seeing that because it's so expensive, right? Just to get it in play, it costs 6. And so a lot of the different types you might be able to cycle, maybe it would have been more productive to go the other direction than to play this out. What I do think might be a possibility, though, is all the cycling we've seen so far is 1 or 2 mana. I think, right? Every single one is 1 or 2 mana. Maybe there's going to be some of these Scourge-esque cycling costs.
That's interesting.
If we had a situation where there's a 3BB or something, now we're talking, right? If you actually turn this, first of all, just the Fluctuator ability, in some deck is going to be interesting, but you're really getting a discount if you turn a 5 cycle or a 7 cycle to 0 versus a 1 or a 2. So that's something I think I'm looking forward to. And in some format, maybe you'd be able to do it anyway, right? Because those cards exist in wider formats.
Yeah, the prospect of doing that in Standard, though, I could easily see them making something like that,
Sure. Yeah, they'd love to twist things that we've seen and liked in the last set of the year. Okay, it happens all the time, right? Hey, let's make a set that has no non-gold cards, or let's radically change how we're dealing with artifacts or casting costs, and I think it's well within their range to reintroduce cycling the way they have, and then just twist it to its side. Because from my perspective, I'm more excited about Amonkhet so far than any of the sets we've seen in a while, right? Since probably when Landfall came back. Like these are my people. These are, like, I love being able to turn my lands that I draw late in the game into spells, and turn my clunky forecasting cost removal spells into lands, so I can make my land drop early in the game. And like having the flexibility to use one to do the other one's job, just so I don't fall behind. That is my people. And there's powerful threats. I love haymakers, and I love just pregnant design space. I think that New Perspectives is like, there's never, if New Perspectives becomes a deck, or becomes the linchpin of a deck, or gives us incentives to play cycling in a certain way, there's never been a strategy like this before. This is a new thing, right? Like, there's been cards like Astral Slide, right? But that's like Astral Slide, oh, let's play with Eternal Witness. Like Lightning Rift, okay, got it. Two damage is a thing, so that incentivizes Elvish Warrior of all things. But New Perspective is literally a new thing, right? It's 6, and then it gives you all the mana you want in terms of practical utility, but you still have to figure out something to do with it once you've got it going. But it's also a gamble, right? Like, who taps 6 for no effect on the board right now, right? If you're doing that, it means something has changed, and you are the agent of change if you're successful in doing this. So, I don't know. That's my perspective on New Perspectives. I think it's just so appreciably different.
What about with Rise from the Tides?
Oh, Rise.
If you have enough
action.
Right, like if you have enough stuff like Renewed Faith, enough stuff like Scarab Feast, as long as you just got enough of that type of jazz, I mean, heck, it's possible. It's inside the realm of possibility that you would even play, some fringe limited tricks like Jiru's Resolve, because you just want to have all the cards cycle. And then when you just drop this, you rip through your deck very, very rapidly, and on your next turn, Rise from the Tides and make oodles of zombies. Now, that sounds pretty slow, but maybe there's a version of that is that sacrifices a little bit of the turbo, a little bit of the going super, super big in order to play with a few cheap interaction cards, because you could very easily just end up with like 15, 2/2 zombies or whatever. And zombie's an interesting creature type in this set. They've already pointed out some zombie synergies.
Yeah, a lot of the coolest cards are making zombie tokens, right?
Right. So I think it'll be interesting trying to figure out the right way to use this. In particular, I'm going to be keeping an eye out for any kind of Lurgoyf effect, any kind of Laboratory Maniac, any kind of Songs of the Damned. It's been a little while on that one.
So I think that there's just a number of – evergreen's probably the wrong word, but recurring kind of rules that we can make about Magic cards and how they're utilized and what kind of impact those themes have in constructed and the space that we have in deck design. And taking a thing that somebody is willing to pay mana for, like drawing a card, and reducing the cost of that thing by – they're already willing to pay it, right? Reducing the cost by any amount, certainly down to 0. I think it's worth a second look. And the fact that this one starts with draw 3 cards is worth two second looks.
Right, Inverter of Truth, man. Inverter of Truth is kind of cute when you're doing all these graveyard shenanigans. Like, if your graveyard is just full of cycling cards, I'm not sure what you end up doing. But you can, much quicker than normal, get a bunch of cards into your graveyard so that when you Inverter with Truth, you still have a bunch of cards in your deck, and you know what they are, and they're all 0-mana draw a card.
Yeah, so Inverter of Truth is a 4 casting cost 2BB 6/6 creature, but it has Devoid, so it's not actually black. It's flying, but it has the text, when Inverter of Truth enters the battlefield, exile all cards from your library face down, then shuffle all cards from your graveyard into your library. So what you're saying, Patrick, is loading your cards, loading your graveyard rather, with cycling cards and drawing up, and then playing the Inverter of Truth just gives you kind of more life, more vigor. Is that?
Yeah, like it's like, you know how when you Doomsday and you leave your deck full of cards that will make you win. It's like Gush and Gitaxian Probe and whatever. You just already know all the cards in your deck. Draw more cards so that you can do your whatever your combo is.
Yep.
If you can fill your graveyard with 0-mana cycling cards because you have this enchantment and you Inverter of Truth, it is kind of cute.
You just turned your deck into
all 0-mana draw cards.
Yeah,
there's something. It's missing the final, piece of the puzzle, but that's an interesting little interaction that could be useful in some context.
Actually, that's really interesting. Like, what if you had for whatever reason, there's a card you needed to cast twice, or you need to get a certain card back, and you could make your graveyard that card because you cast it already, and then a bunch of 0 casting cost cycling cards. It just kind of can get. It's like a tutor, right? It's a really weirdly convoluted tutor, but heck, a 6/6 for 4 flying. I'd say there's worse things than that, but there are way worse things than that.
So here's another interaction for you: Crawling Sensation. Crawling Sensation is that that Shadows over Innistrad green enchantment. It's 2 and a green. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, for the first time each turn, put a 1/1 green insect creature token on the battlefield. So for each Crawling Sensation you have in play, on your turn you can pay 0 cycle, get a 1/1. On your opponent's turn, pay 0 cycle, get a 1/1.
So you can only get 1 per turn, no matter how many.
You can only get, but it doesn't cost any mana. So you are just getting 2 extra 1/1s per turn. No?
This one, I don't buy the... I was actually thinking about the 6/6 for 4. Why don't people just play this? This card seems great. But this one, Crawling Sensation, no, I don't have that feeling. It doesn't seem that great to me.
All right. Well, and that's fair.
It seems like a lot of work to get a 1/1 every other turn.
No, it's not every other turn. It's twice a turn.
It seems like a lot of work even to get 2 1/1s a turn.
Yeah, and that's not even counting if you're playing Emperor.
All right. On that note, I almost said new sensations, new perspectives. I think that it's going to demand some new perspectives. I think it's like a really awesome Johnny card, right? Like awesome Johnny card.
It's the classic,
maybe Spike card, but awesome.
It's the classic. Yeah, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to turn out to be the tier 1 strategy because it's often a very fine line with a card like this of how quickly it goes from curiosity to what the hell, man. Like look at Aetherworks Marvel, right? Like that card went from 0 to 60 in a hurry.
Back to 0.
It has a very, very small bandwidth before it is warping.
Well,
but it can work. Sometimes, like Aetherworks Marvel is a strong card, and sometimes the strategies are busted. Swans of Bryn or Goal, same thing.
Breaking and entering, right?
Yes.
0 for 10 years, 11 out of 10, back to 0, right?
Back to 0.
Right back to 0. In fact, I would argue breaking and entering unheard of heights. When breaking and entering was just like a twinkle in Mark Rosewater's eye, no one thought breaking and entering would ever be this good. And then, now, breaking and entering is worse than it ever was. A mere 1 month after it was an 11 out of 10.
So it goes.
New perspectives. It's got he's got the maybe I'm gonna be really, really flashy. It could do it.
It's definitely going to be fun to try and to try to abuse it. I personally am going to be Felidar Guardian this thing, and you don't have to blink this very many times before you've kind of done it. And you can try to like dig to your Saheeli combo, right? Because you so quickly are just pitching all your extra land and your cast out and your renewed faith and whatever.
I mean, there's like crazy things I can think of. Like, once you become unrestricted by what cards you're playing because you're in larger formats, like this card gets really wacky, right? Like, you could just go like intuition for 3 new perspectives, replenish them, right? In some context. First of all, you've just drawn a whole bunch of cards from the new perspectives coming from the graveyard directly into play. Then now, I'm sure you're going to be able to have a handful of cycling cards if you constructed your deck around it. And it's just really just a question of what payoff you wanted, you know?
Yep.
So, like, that's, like, you've done a lot of work to intuition into these new perspectives. Show me it was worth it. And I think that's part of it, right? Like, it's an expensive card, but man, does it have compelling text.
Yep. Both lines. Draw 3 or Fluctuator with better Fluctuator.
Yeah, better than Fluctuator.
I'm interested in both.
Right.
Awesome, man. And, obviously this is our second episode of this week, so if, make sure to check out the yesterday's episode, and make sure to check us out next week, too. It's been a blast, man. I'm looking forward to seeing everything this set has.
All of the things Patrick said. I'm Michael J. Flores.
I'm Patrick Chapin.
Bye-bye.
See you next week.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, use a jail or hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber